In today's episode of the Giraldo Show, we're going to be looking at the winner of the Time Person of the Year and a new poll that shows independent support for the president in the times of impeachment. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to the Giraldo Show. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Giraldo Show. I am your host, Sebastian Giraldo. Quick apology for no release of an episode yesterday. I was working on a final project for my last days of class at the university that I'm currently studying in, so I could not release an episode, but I'm back, and I'm going to be releasing episodes at the normal time, normal schedule from this day forward. Now, yesterday, obviously, we saw that the Democrats are starting to put out the articles for impeachment, going on two, which is abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. I was going to get into that yesterday, but in today's episode, I want to get into some different stories, specifically the winner of the Time Person of the Year and a poll that actually talks about impeachment. So let's actually start with the poll numbers. So the poll numbers show that Donald Trump is getting a 7-point swing after the impeachment inquiry and that he is doing pretty well with independent voters, people who are not Democrats or not Republicans. So a new Monmouth poll released on Tuesday showed only good news for President Donald Trump. The president, fighting off the Democrats' hyper-partisan efforts to impeach him, received a 7-point swing in his favor concerning the 2020 election. Trump also cleaned up with independents, polling double digits higher than any of the Democratic presidential candidates looking to take him out in 2020. And I think that's pretty good news. Getting the independent voters on your side is a great way to win more elections, win more states. And we're seeing right here, President Trump, the economy is booming right now. He's doing things pretty well so far. And the independents are seeing that, and they're not really buying any of this impeachment stuff that the Democrats are putting out. And speaking about the impeachment stuff, I'll go into a little bit of a brief thing. Abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, I don't see really any evidence of any of that. I mean, I guess you could make a case for some of that, but I personally don't see any evidence with stuff that I've read, with news that I've heard. It's just they had to take bribery out because they couldn't prove the intent of bribery from President Trump. So they went from quid pro quo, but they couldn't find the quid pro quo. They went to bribery, but they couldn't find bribery. So now they're just going very generic and saying abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. And it looks, I still think President Trump will be impeached because the Democrats kind of have to impeach him at this point. He won't be removed from office. The Senate might drag this out for some time, but the Senate is going to acquit him eventually, and President Trump is probably going to win re-election in 2020, and these poll numbers seem to be showing a good sign of that. So journalist and author Ryan Girdusky reported on the Monmouth polling Tuesday morning. When participants were asked if President Trump should be re-elected to the White House, Trump received a 7-point swing in his favor after the impeachment inquiry. The no answer to re-election dropped 3 points, and the yes answer climbed 4 points. Trump's favorable rating was also higher than his Democratic challengers by at least 3 points, though former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg had lower unfavorable ratings per Girdusky. So these are some of the ratings. So Trump is 46% favorable, unfavorable 52%, Joe Biden 43% favorable and 50% unfavorable, Bernie Sanders at 41% favorable, 54% unfavorable, and Elizabeth Warren 40% favorable and 50% unfavorable. Pete Buttigieg 34% and 35% respectively, and Michael Bloomberg, who is now starting to surge in the polls, is at 26% favorable and 54% unfavorable. And if we actually look at the poll numbers right now, Joe Biden still in the lead. I know we're going off a little bit of a tangent, but I'll want to mention the poll numbers as next week on the 19th is going to be the next Democratic debate. We heard news from Tulsi Gabbard that she might not be in the debate, which is a bit disappointing for me because I wanted to see her in that debate. But anyway, here are the poll numbers. Joe Biden at 28.5% of the polling data. Bernie Sanders in second place at 17.8%. Elizabeth Warren at 15.3%. Pete Buttigieg at 9%. Michael Bloomberg at 5.5%. Kamala Harris is still up there for some reason at 3.5%. These are from yesterday, December 10th, so I'm not sure why Harris's numbers haven't gone away so far. Andrew Yang at 3.2%, Amy Klobuchar at 2.5%, Cory Booker at 1.8%, Tom Steyer at 1.7%, Tulsi Gabbard at 1.3%, Julian Castro at 1%, and Michael Bennet at 0.8%. So Joe Biden has a over 10% lead on any other Democratic candidate at the moment. But it looks like Trump has higher favorable ratings than Joe Biden at the moment. Trump cleaned up with independents, polling double digits higher in his favorables than socialist Bernie Sanders, Biden, Buttigieg, Warren, and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. So among independents, here are the favorable versus unfavorable. Donald Trump finally has a higher favorable rating at 49% compared to his 48% unfavorable. Bernie Sanders is at 39% and 56% respectively. Joe Biden at 38% and 57%. Pete Buttigieg, 34% and 33%, Elizabeth Warren, 32% and 55%, and Michael Bloomberg at 25% and 56%. And again, that's favorable compared to unfavorable. First number saying how favorable they are to independent voters, and the second number being unfavorable. So in a report published on Sunday, Firehouse Strategies presented their new quarterly battleground polling results, and they were quite grim for Democrats. In a survey of 1,759 likely 2020 general election voters in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania conducted last week, which was from the 3rd of December to the 5th of December, the Firehouse Optimist pollsters found that Trump was surging as an apparent result of the Democrats' impeachment effort, while Democratic frontrunner, former Vice President Joe Biden, is suffering a sharp decline in support. And if you remember, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, those are the states that Donald Trump actually won, I believe, to get the candidacy to become president, I should say. So showing that he's surging once again in those states is pretty good, has a pretty good sign for his re-election campaign. Firehouse Strategy said, as the impeachment process heats up in Washington, Donald Trump is seeing a boost in support in crucial swing states. Across the board, President Trump is polling well against the Democratic field in each of these battleground states. Notably, Vice President Joe Biden has seen a sharp decline in support in our surveys as he currently runs behind President Trump in each of the 3 states. So that's good news for the President of the United States at the moment. He's getting a good surge in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, 3 swing states that I think voted Democrat when Obama was against Mitt Romney, now voting for Donald Trump. So that's good news. All right, so the next story, Time Person of the Year. Who is Time Person of the Year? Well, what I've heard was there were a couple of candidates, Greta Thunberg, who eventually won the award, and I'll get into why I don't think she really deserved it. I think Megan Rapinoe was also one of the people on there. Hong Kong protesters, in my opinion, should have won the Time Person of the Year, even though there are multiple people. They are fighting for freedom, for their independence from China, and they should have been on this magazine cover. But instead, the Time Person of the Year is a 16-year-old girl not going to school who just complains that we are destroying the climate without actually proposing anything new or without really doing anything. She's traveling in boats, but I'll go ahead and get into kind of some of my problems, not with Greta Thunberg, but with the people kind of taking advantage of the 16-year-old girl. So 16-year-old climate change activist Greta Thunberg was named Time Person of the Year on Wednesday, becoming the youngest person in history to receive such an honor. So Time Person of the Year, from what I understand, is more of a title that says the most talked about person of the year, because back in the 40s, they had both, I believe, Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler were Time Person of the Year. So not saying that these are the best people alive, but I think it's mostly saying the most impactful people and the most talked about people of that year. Time said Thunberg is not a leader of any political party or advocacy group. She is neither the first to sound the alarm about the climate crisis nor the most qualified to fix it. She is not a scientist or a politician. She has no access to traditional levers or of influence. She is not a billionaire or a princess, a pop star, or even an adult. That's the first thing. Time just mentioned every single problem with why Greta Thunberg should just be a kid. I mean, the left is just taking advantage of a 16-year-old girl who brags about not going to school, saving the planet, when she's just out here complaining and just saying how dare you to everyone. For example, she's saying how dare you to the United States when since I believe 2009 our carbon emissions have decreased 10%, but she doesn't go to China or India whose emissions have increased by over 100% each. I believe China is at 120%, while India is, I believe, a little bit under that, but still over 100% of an increase in the past 10 years. She just complains to the United States and says, how dare you? But she's not qualified to be talking about any of this. She just says, we're destroying our planet. Okay, Greta, well then propose something. I'm open to getting cleaner air or saving more energy, but I need you to propose something. I can't just have someone say, you're destroying the planet, and then I ask the person, okay, so how are you supposed to save it? And then they say, you're not getting the question. You're destroying the planet with your habits. And then I can say, okay, what bill can you propose? What can we propose? And then they say I'm not qualified to answer that question. Well, if you're going to go out here and talk to me about saving the planet and climate change, have some ideas that you want to propose to some leaders of governments around the world. Don't just say, how dare you, and just insult everyone on the planet who doesn't agree with your crisis that the world will end in 10 years. Propose something. It's much more efficient to propose something and actually be active in the community rather than just saying, how dare you. Like Mr. Beast and Mark Rober planting 20 million trees is much more effective than Greta Thunberg saying, how dare you. And that's just the case. I think there was another Swedish teenager, I don't remember his name, but he actually had a mechanism that he developed to clean up plastic trash from the ocean. Why is that not talked more about? Because it doesn't really fit the narrative? Because he's actually doing something for the planet. He's actually picking up trash, plastic from the oceans. Greta Thunberg, all she's doing is traveling in a sailboat, to which another crew goes back to Sweden on an airplane, further damaging the planet, goes to the UN, complains, and insults the president, insults all the nations who apparently aren't doing enough, but she doesn't propose anything new. That's not how this works. You don't become Time Person of the Year for complaining and just insulting people. Now, obviously, there have been some tweets from a lot of political activists. Hillary Clinton tweeted out, I couldn't think of a better person of the year than at Greta Thunberg. I am grateful for all she's done to raise awareness of the climate crisis and her willingness to tell hard, motivating truths. As she said today, climate is coming whether you like it or not. Well, I mean, obviously. It's really freaking cold. I was promised that the earth was warming up. Like, what the heck? Why is it so cold outside? I was promised that this would be happening, but apparently not. Kimberly Johnson tweeted out, deserved. Also, I want to rub it in the smug faces of the bitter men who are intimidated by her power. I don't think they're intimidated by her power. They're just pointing out the obvious, that it's a 16-year-old girl who's being politicized by the radical left to fit their cause. I promise you, in a couple of years, I think Greta Thunberg will be out of the picture. Similar to David Hogg. I don't hear a lot of news about David Hogg anymore. One year he was the political activist for gun control. The next year he goes to Harvard and he's done. I think that's going to happen with Greta Thunberg. It might not be as immediate of a drop, but I still think it's going to happen, and it's going to kind of show what the left is about, how they like to politicize every issue, and then after they've done it with someone young enough to where if you if you criticize their message or what they're doing, then you can just point out that you're insulting a 16-year-old. Once that youth goes away for Greta Thunberg, once she reaches the age of adulthood, which she can actually be criticized properly without anyone pointing out the age card, leftists, I think, are just going to throw away that narrative and go with someone else that's going to be younger. That's going to happen. That's just my opinion on it. Again, I'm not attacking Greta Thunberg. I think she's a good person who could potentially have good intentions, but she's been extremely politicized. She's not going to school, not getting an education. If she were in the United States, if she were a citizen of the United States, that would be illegal for the parents to do that. But since she's in Sweden, she can apparently skip 32 weeks of school without any consequence. Just let her be a kid. If she wants to be an activist for climate change, fine, but at least let her reach the age of adulthood. Let her be at least 18. Wait 2 more years before politicizing a young girl like this. Eugene Gu tweeted out, even though I was rooting for the Hong Kong protesters, trust me, I was too. I am overjoyed for Greta Thunberg and her well-deserved Time Magazine Person of the Year award. Rather than snubbing Donald Trump, this is about having faith in the power of youth to save our world. Go Greta. Dr. Jack Brown tweeted out, Greta Thunberg wins hashtag Time Magazine 2019 Person of the Year. She simultaneously awakens the spirit of our collective childhood among the wisdom of Mother Earth. Greta gives us hope, inspiration, wisdom, and a profound sense of urgency. Now, here's a different side of the story. Some conservatives that are tweeting about Greta winning this award. So Donald Trump Jr. tweets out, Time leaves out the Hong Kong protesters fighting for their lives and freedoms to push a team being used as a marketing gimmick. How dare you? I think Donald Trump Jr. is very correct in this assessment. Hong Kong protesters are being brutally murdered, abused by Chinese police, and they're just pushing a narrative that they're using Greta Thunberg as a marketing gimmick, which is true. They're using a 16-year-old girl to market the climate crisis, as they have dubbed it. I don't think that's appropriate. I've said that multiple times in the podcast. I just don't think it's appropriate. Matt Walsh tweets out, "Wow, cisgendered white girl as person of the year. Time magazine reinforcing white heteronormativity. Once again, outrageous." Now, Matt Walsh kind of going on the entire stick of, oh, we're so diverse, but they let a white cisgendered girl win person of the year. Sebastian Gorka tweets out a picture of Baby Yoda as person of the year. Baby Yoda with all the memes that have been coming out of him are pretty funny, in my opinion. So, I mean, again, this isn't an attack on Greta Thunberg. It's more of an attack on the people that are politicizing her and taking advantage of the 16-year-old girl who should be being a kid, should be in school, should just be living her life, and just, in my opinion, if she wants to be a political activist, again, wait until she's older. Don't just politicize her right now. It makes no sense. Just let her be a kid. And that's really all I have for today's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button on any platform that you're listening on, and I'll see you tomorrow. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to The Giraldo Show.